I fully. Oh, you're on. Go ahead.
And welcome back to VMworld Live. I'm John Troyer. We're here in Copenhagen. I have with me for this next segment Adam Zimman, Group Manager of our Global Strategic Customer Engineering, and Dan Anderson, Principal Architect in one of those groups. So Adam, Dan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot for having us, John.
We're here to talk about the VMworld Labs. It is the hit of the show. Can you tell me, we'll talk a little bit about why the labs have been so successful and what's the magic that goes behind them, but give us some, you guys are very good at keeping statistics, and you have giant thermometers all over and speedometers, so you're tracking quite well the activity, and I see a line out the door going on here most of the time. So tell me about how many labs and how many VMs we're pushing.
Sure. So I can give you some of the simple stats. We're looking at 30 lab topics that are being delivered during the show, and we've got 240 distinct user stations. So people are being able to come in, and at each station they're able to choose from any of the 30 lab topics. And then to supply that back-end system and things like that, I can let Dan give you some of the stats on the infrastructure that we're using that is quite impressive.
Oh, okay. So we're using exactly the same gear that we actually used in San Francisco. What we did was we sourced some of the local thin clients and the actual support for the actual workstations themselves, sourced them locally here in Europe. So we effectively didn't have to ship any gear. We literally connected into the same environment that we used for San Francisco, which is Terramark down in Miami, Florida, as well as Verizon in Ashburn, Virginia. Got all of the student stations set up, and then we basically connected them to two 100 megabit point-to-point links that are dedicated going to each facility. And there we are.
I want to give a quick shout out. Also, we got some help with the connectivity end here in Copenhagen from Colt as well.
Okay. So these are labs, they're in the cloud, they're calling it the Labcloud. Can you talk about how it is, why it is a cloud and how you're instantiating it and what kind of agility it's given us?
Sure. I think from a simplistic perspective, what does cloud mean? On demand is the easiest way to simplify down what cloud technology actually provides. And what we're doing is we're not providing a application per se. Instead, we're actually providing an entire data center on demand to every single attendee that sits down at a lab station. And that's effectively what we're doing.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, it's a hybrid cloud, so we actually do have gear on premise. I don't want to mislead anybody. We have gear here on premise in the event that the ultimate goal for our team is to actually provide these labs, and if we lost connectivity, we wanted to plan for obviously the worst case scenario. So we do have gear on site. But right now, the entire student set is actually all of the 240 student sets that we have. They're all going out to the remote sites, and we're not even using the local gear except for some of the common services that we would normally use. So it's in effect an actual hybrid cloud.
So, and basically, what I thought was very interesting actually was because it's a cloud, because you're serving everything from a hosted data center across the Atlantic, the agility that gave you actually were up here in Copenhagen a day early.
Correct. Yeah,
because you didn't have to set up and rack up and
ultimately
test
the interesting thing about setting up here in Copenhagen was we actually spent a greater amount of time waiting for the setup to take place of the zero clients themselves and the individual user stations. That was done by the facility staff and people who were coming in and setting up and running all the cable and everything like that. We were actually able to come in and have the environment, as it were, up and ready to go within a day, compared to if we were to have to build this entire infrastructure on site, we're looking at minimum 4 or 5 days to be able to actually build out that capacity.
And of course, all these labs are running over PC over IP. Can you talk about the experience of using PC over IP?
Sure. We obviously learned our lessons, and we had lessons learned in San Francisco with some of the connectivity options that were provided to us from a link perspective. However, the protocol itself, which is PCOIP, basically maintained very well. It's a protocol that was jointly developed. Was developed by Teradici, and then we've actually bought the rights to utilize that protocol on our client View clients. And so we're using PCIP 0 clients, which are basically clients that have no operating system on them, and they're literally connecting, or they have a limited operating system on them, but they're connecting using the protocol of PCIP, which is optimized for distance connectivity, the transference of content, media, things along that lines, and it's very effective. So we connect from here via the PCIP thin client back to View desktops, VMware View desktops that are actually sitting in the actual facilities with Terramark and Verizon across the links. And we're actually only using effectively about 20 to 25% of our bandwidth for 240 simultaneous connections.
Now, in a normal lab situation, if I have a lab for an application, I can just use vSphere. Because this was the case where our lab application was an entire data center, you're using a nested ESX architecture.
Yeah, that's correct.
vSphere on vSphere.
Yep.
Which, for everybody that's out there using vSphere, I mean, it's kind of cool. Sometimes we can do it on work. People are using it on workstation, do their home labs, but to run vSphere on vSphere is definitely.
It presents challenges,
opportunities. We're operating in what we call to the customers an unsupported mode. Nothing we're doing here is supported by VMware as a rule. So,
but then the question people ask then, though, you immediately see if you're a VMware reseller or if you're a VMware admin. I mean, this kind of capability to get a full data center and to a sandbox to play in is immensely valuable. So everybody's been asking. So you kept it up during VMworld San Francisco, and you fired it up again in Copenhagen. Is there any chance that people can access it after the show?
Yeah, this is definitely something that we're exploring, aggressively and looking to figure out. Ultimately, from a technology perspective, we feel as though that we have reached kind of the ideal configuration. We now know how to set up and stage the environment. We know how it scales. We know how to actually replicate at scale. So we're capable of taking that, and building out to additional users, larger user sets, things like that. What the largest opportunities that we have to pursue are those of operationalizing those activities.
Sure. You wrote the software that manages all this for the purpose of running the show. You
Correct.
Didn't write it as a permanent training solution.
That, and also there are other aspects of it where you need to work out where and how it's actually hosted. Whether or not we work with partners to be able to provide facilities.
The business and the services.
Yeah, exactly.
The technology is there. Obviously, we're doing it. Labcloud, which you referred to earlier on, is not a product. It's basically it's an application that was written by Claire Roberts and Curtis Pope, two VMware employees who wrote it in their spare time to actually help facilitate what we're doing here. But they wrote it using all of our API sets and talking to all of our products. So it's not something that we're readily jumping into a product stream with because of the obvious reasons. But
well, everybody that uses it gets really excited. I mean, and so it's by far one of the highlights of this year's VMworld. I mean, partially because labs have been so challenging. If you're really using instructor-led labs, you only have a certain number of seats, and I can only sign up for 2, and if I don't sign up early enough, I lose my slot. This is great. Some people are spending their entire show here.
Yeah.
Have there been any interesting stories or comments, folks that have been in,
Yeah.
in the lab? Have you had to kick some people out?
To my knowledge, we actually haven't had to kick any people out. Although what we are doing is we're actually trying to encourage and incent those individuals that are overly enthusiastic, shall we say, and we've given them the ability to, after we see that they're tracking, to try and take as many labs as possible. We've actually given them a specialized card, which is called the Fast Track card, and is capable of basically allowing them to jump the queue, as I heard one gentleman say. Go up to the front of the line so that basically they can just, in rapid succession, not have to waste time standing in the line and waiting for a station to become available. They basically jump to the head of the queue, and we give them the opportunity to try and complete as many as possible.
But I think even if you don't do that, it's actually it's pretty easy.
Oh yeah,
you're open late, you're open early, you're open late.
Sure.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, we're doing extended hours. We actually extended it when we wanted to hit certain goals, and in order to try to hit some of those goals, we wanted to extend the hours a little bit. So hence the opening early. We added an hour on in front of most. We should open up at 8 o'clock every morning, and we're closing at 6 o'clock for the first 2 nights, and then at 4 o'clock for the remainder of the night.
So if people aren't here, let's see, they can't get access to the live labs. Will we be publishing the lab manuals? Do you know?
Yes, we absolutely are going to be publishing the lab manual.
Yeah.
We will absolutely be publishing the lab manual.
Because they're always very popular.
He wasn't sure. I just found out. I mean, my understanding is we're publishing the content
Right.
for the lab manuals onto to VMworld.com post show. I don't know when that's going to be, but that's what I was told.
Great. So that definitely look for that on VMworld.com. Well, Adam, Dan, thanks for coming on VMworld Live and telling us about labs.
Thanks
Thanks
for
a
having
lot,
us.
John.